The oncology ward was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors and the soft whir of my chemotherapy pump. I sat alone in the treatment chair, watching my family pack their designer carry-on bags at my bedside. "We can't cancel our cruise for your chemo," my sister Jessica announced, carefully arranging her new Gucci sunglasses. "Mom and Dad agree it's not that serious. It's just her first round anyway. The Caribbean waits for no one," Mom added, checking her passport. "The cruise line's cancellation policy is very strict. Besides, Dr. Roberts said this is a very treatable form of lymphoma." I stared at the red liquid slowly dripping into my fore, wondering how my stage 3.5 lymphoma had become less important than their 7-day luxury cruise. They'd booked it 7 months ago, long before my diagnosis, but the timing couldn't have been worse. "Sarah, honey," Dad said, straightening his vacation polo shirt, "you're 32 years old. You don't need us holding your hand through every treatment. This will teach you independence." Independence, right? Because that's what you need most when starting aggressive chemotherapy. To be completely alone. The oncology nurse, Maria, shot them a disapproving look as she adjusted my medication. She'd been trying to explain the importance of family support during initial treatment, but they'd dismissed her concerns with practiced ease. "We're all medical professionals here," Mom reminded everyone. She was the head of cardiology at Metro General, while Dad ran the surgical department. Jessica was a dermatologist with a thriving private practice. "We understand the protocols better than most." What they didn't mention was that I was also a medical professional, just not the kind they respected. My role as director of oncology services apparently didn't count since it involved too much paperwork and not enough prestige, as Jessica often said. "Your cruise ship leaves at p.m., right?" I asked quietly, checking the time. "You should probably head to the port now to avoid traffic." "Oh," Jessica exclaimed, grabbing her designer suitcase. "She's right. We need to go. Sarah, try not to bother the nurses too much. They have real emergencies to handle." Mom paused at the door. "We'll check on you when we get back next week. Make sure you keep up with your fluids and rest. And don't forget to file those department budget reports. Sick leave isn't an excuse for missing deadlines." I watched them hurry out, their excited chatter about cruise activities fading down the hallway. Maria waited until they were gone before placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Anderson," she said softly, using my professional title, something my family rarely did. "Would you like me to call someone else for you?" I shook my head, maintaining my composed expression. "No need, Maria. I'm used to handling things on my own." What my family didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that my paperwork role had changed significantly 7 months ago. The hospital board had unanimously voted me in as the youngest executive director in the hospital's history. I'd kept the news quiet, wanting to prove myself before making any announcements. The hours crawled by as my first chemotherapy session continued. My phone occasionally buzzed with cruise ship photos, my family posting endless selfies from their luxury suite, the champagne welcome reception, the gourmet dinner at the captain's table. Maria stayed past her shift to check on me, but I insisted she go home to her family. "I'll be fine," I assured her. "The night shift knows how to reach me if anything comes up." As darkness fell outside my window, I reviewed hospital documents on my tablet, my fingers slightly shaky from the medication. Department reviews were scheduled for next week, including performance evaluations for all department heads. How interesting that my family had chosen this particular week for their vacation. At midnight, the night nurse brought me some tea and helped me settle in for a few hours of rest. "Big day tomorrow," she said with a knowing smile. She, like most of the staff, was well aware of who really ran the hospital now. My phone lit up with another cruise photo. My family toasting their first night at sea. Mom had tagged it #blessed #family very first #living our best life. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so painful. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on tomorrow instead of the nausea building in my stomach. The hospital board would be meeting at AM sharp to review departmental leadership. As executive director, my first major decision would be evaluating the performance of our department heads, including the heads of cardiology and surgery. Mom and Dad had no idea that their daughter, the one they'd left alone during chemotherapy to go on a cruise, would be deciding their professional futures. They'd never bothered to read the hospital-wide memo announcing the leadership change, too busy planning their vacation to notice their underachieving daughter's name at the top of the organizational chart. Through the window, I could see the lights of other hospital rooms where patients were fighting their own battles. Some had families cramped in uncomfortable chairs beside them, refusing to leave their loved ones alone. Others, like me, faced the night in solitude. But unlike those other patients, I had the power to ensure this kind of abandonment wouldn't happen again, at least not in my hospital. Sometimes the most important medical lessons come from unexpected teachers. I drifted off to sleep as another cruise photo lit up my phone. Let them enjoy their vacation. Tomorrow would bring a very different kind of wake-up call. The morning brought a flurry of activity to the oncology ward. My second day of chemo was scheduled to begin at a.m., but first, I had a more pressing appointment. At 8:03 a.m., my assistant helped me into a wheelchair, my professional attire carefully arranged to hide the four-port in my chest. The board is assembled. Dr. Anderson, she informed me, wheeling me toward the executive conference room, and we've just received an interesting call from the cruise ship's medical center. I nodded, unsurprised. Let me guess. They're requesting emergency satellite communication with our cardiology and surgical department. Yes. Apparently there's been a serious incident on board requiring expert consultation. They specifically asked for Dr. Catherine Thompson and Dr. James Thompson. How unfortunate that both department heads are unreachable during this emergency, I said quietly, straightening my blazer. I suppose they'll have to speak with the executive director instead. The conference room fell silent as I was wheeled to my place at the head of the table. Board members tried to hide their concern at my pale appearance, but I could see the sympathy in their eyes. They'd all visited me yesterday, after my family left, each expressing their disgust at my abandonment. Good morning, I began, my voice steady despite my nausea. Let's start with the emergency at hand. The cruise ship Paradise Dreams is requesting immediate medical consultation. Their medical center has reported multiple cases of severe food poisoning, including 3 passengers from our own hospital's leadership team. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Unfortunately, I continued, the heads of cardiology and surgery are currently unavailable, having left the hospital without proper coverage during a critical review period. This brings us to our first order of business, departmental leadership evaluation. My assistant distributed thick folders to each board member. Inside were 7 months of meticulously documented incidents, missed emergency calls, abandoned patients, neglected responsibilities, all in favor of social events and personal activities. As you can see, I gestured to the evidence. There's been a disturbing pattern of behavior from certain department heads. This latest incident, abandoning hospital duties for a cruise during performance reviews, leaving no proper chain of command, is merely the most recent example. The board members flipped through the pages, their expressions growing darker with each documented violation. And now, I added, their negligence has left us unable to provide emergency consultation during a medical crisis. A crisis, I might add, that affects them personally. Right on cue, the conference room phone rang. The cruise ship's medical center was calling again, this time sounding decidedly more desperate. I pressed the speaker button. This is Dr. Sarah Anderson, Executive Director of Metro General. How may we assist? There was a pause on the other end. Executive Director, we were trying to reach Dr. Catherine Thompson in cardiology or Dr. James Thompson in surgery. Their family members said their department heads there. I'm afraid they're unavailable, I replied calmly. They left the hospital without proper coverage to take a cruise. I believe they're currently your patients. Another pause. Yes, they're quite ill. Along with Dr. Jessica Thompson, they're requesting transfer to Metro General's VIP wing. I see, I said, meeting the board members' eyes. Unfortunately, our VIP wing is currently under review due to certain leadership issues. We'd be happy to admit them as regular patients, subject to standard protocols and waiting periods, of course. The ship's doctor cleared his throat uncomfortably. They're insisting on speaking with hospital leadership. They say it's a family matter. A family matter. I echoed, my voice remaining professional. Like my first chemotherapy session yesterday, was a family matter. Please inform them that the executive director will be happy to discuss their situation during regular office hours next week. For now, they'll need to follow standard patient protocols. After the call ended, I turned back to the board. Now shall we discuss the future of our cardiology and surgical departments? I believe we need leadership that understands the true meaning of medical responsibility and family support. The board's vote was unanimous. By the time my family's water taxi rushed them back to shore 14 hours later, their department head positions had been reassigned, their hospital privileges were under review, and their daughter, the one they'd left alone during chemotherapy, was officially their superior. They arrived at the hospital looking decidedly unwell, still in their cruise wear, only to be met by hospital security, who directed them to the regular emergency room entrance. No VIP treatment, no special access, no preferential care. But we run departments here, I heard Mom protest weakly. Not anymore, the security guard replied, checking his updated staff list. You'll need to speak with the executive director about that. I believe she's in oncology right now, receiving her chemotherapy treatment. You know, the one you left her alone for? I closed my eyes as Maria started my second round of chemo, knowing my family was finally learning the most important lesson in medicine. Every patient deserves care, compassion, and support, even the ones you think don't matter. Sometimes the best treatment for arrogance is a strong dose of humility. 3 days after their inglorious return from the cruise, my family finally gained enough strength to demand a meeting with hospital leadership. They were still pale from their bout with food poisoning, their designer cruise outfits replaced by rumpled hospital gowns. Security escorted them to the oncology ward, where I was receiving my third chemotherapy treatment. The conference room had been specially arranged, my treatment chair at the head of the table, 4 poles standing sentinel beside me. This is completely unprofessional, Mom declared as they entered, though her voice lacked its usual authority. Having a meeting here, like this, actually, I replied calmly, adjusting my hospital blanket. I believe it's perfectly appropriate. You see, unlike some medical professionals, I don't abandon my treatments for meetings. They sat uncomfortably, avoiding the sight of my chemotherapy drip. Jessica kept checking her phone, probably hoping her private practice hadn't heard about this scandal. Let's discuss your positions at Metro General. I began opening their files, or rather your former positions. This is ridiculous, Dad interrupted. We've run these departments for 16 years. You can't just... I can, and I did. I cut in smoothly. As executive director, it's my responsibility to ensure this hospital maintains the highest standards of patient care and professional ethics. Standards that you've repeatedly failed to meet. I handed them each a thick folder of documented violations, missed emergency calls, abandoned procedures, neglected responsibilities, and most recently, abandoning your posts during a critical review period to take a cruise. We didn't know about the review period, Mom protested weakly. Because you never read hospital communications, I replied. Too busy planning your vacation to notice the memo announcing your daughter's promotion to executive director 7 months ago. Their faces showed the slow dawn of realization. All those meetings they'd skipped, all those memos they'd ignored, all those times they'd dismissed my paperwork role. Sarah, Jessica tried, using my first name for once. We're family. Surely we can. Family, I interrupted, my voice still professional but carrying an edge. Was it family when you left me alone for my first chemotherapy treatment? Was it family when you said my cancer wasn't serious enough to cancel your cruise? Maria chose that moment to enter, checking my medication. She pointedly ignored my family as she adjusted my anti-nausea drugs. Your department head positions have been filled by doctors who understand that patient care comes before luxury cruises, I continued. Your hospital privileges are under review, and your access to the VIP wing has been permanently revoked. You can't do this to us, Dad said, but his voice was uncertain. Actually, I can, but more importantly, you did this to yourselves. I gestured to the chemotherapy bag beside me. Every patient in this hospital deserves better than what you've demonstrated, including your daughter. Mom's eyes finally focused on my line, really seeing it perhaps for the very first time. Sarah, we didn't think. No, you didn't think. I agreed. You didn't think about your patients when you abandoned them for social events. You didn't think about your responsibilities when you ignored hospital protocols. And you certainly didn't think about me when you left me alone to fight cancer while you sipped champagne on a cruise ship. I handed them each a final document. These are your options. Station turn on say dolmen I dot. These are your options. You can either accept positions as regular staff doctors under close supervision, or you can tender your resignations. Either way, you'll never hold leadership positions at this hospital again. They stared at the papers in shocked silence. Oh, and one more thing, I added as Maria returned with more medication. As part of your rehabilitation, should you choose to stay, you'll each be required to spend one shift per week here in the oncology ward, not as doctors, but as patient care assistants. Perhaps sitting with people during their chemotherapy treatments will remind you why we became doctors in the first place. Jessica's face reddened. You're enjoying this, aren't you? No, I replied honestly, fighting a wave of nausea. I'm not enjoying any of this. The cancer, the chemotherapy, or watching my family demonstrate such a profound lack of compassion. But I am doing my job, ensuring that every patient in this hospital receives the care and support they deserve. I nodded to security. You have 24 hours to make your decision. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to rest. Unlike some people, I take my medical treatments seriously. They filed out silently, their crushed hands fading under the harsh hospital lights. Through the window, I could see other cancer patients with their families, loved ones holding hands, offering comfort, refusing to leave despite the long hours. Maria adjusted my blanket with maternal care. You did good, Dr. Anderson, she said softly. Your parents might not understand it yet, but you just taught them the most important lesson in medicine. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. What's that? That true healing requires more than just medical knowledge. It requires heart. I smiled slightly as I drifted off to sleep. Sometimes the best teachers are the patients themselves, even when that patient is the hospital's executive director, fighting cancer alone because her family chose a cruise ship over compassion. But at least now they understood. In my hospital, every patient matters, even the ones you leave behind.